A very good evening and welcome to the Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangu Shampagi, and the debate is on arts versus sciences. President Yoweri Museveni once again starting up the debate on what is more important for this country, artists or scientists. To discuss that tonight, let me introduce quite a few academics here in their own right. Let me start with Chris Obore. Chris Obore is a master's student in policy. He's also investigations editor at the Daily Monitor. Chris, very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles. How are you doing?
I'm good.
I'm doing arts. And I'm very proud to be doing arts.
You're doing policy. Yes. So, and this is a debate about policy. Yeah. Which policy should government adopt to promote, to quicken the pace of development for this country?
Okay. You don't adopt one policy, several policies. Maybe
Professor Venances Baria Variamreva was former Vice Chancellor of Makerere University and now heads Uganda Technology and Management University, UTAMU. You need to help me correct that.
Yes. That's the name, and I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, very nice to have you. Melina Platus Izama. Melina, you've been missing for some days.
I have.
Very nice to have you back.
Thank you so much.
And Bernard Tabaire. Bernard Tabaire is a founder and director of programs at the African Center for Media Excellence. He's also one of...
you should say co-founder.
Huh? Co-founder.
Don't create me problems.
I didn't know there are problems in privately founded.
There might be.
Yes, and Bernard is a senior journalist. Let me start with you, Bernard. You've been listening to this debate about arts and science.
You should start with the policy people and... yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Okay. Charles, go ahead.
This debate, and I was conscious when we were putting together the panel with my producer, Emma, asking how many scientists do we have, who is a scientist, who is not a scientist, and that debate, the debate that has been started by the president again, how does it fit into the Ghanaian context, in your view?
I don't think we know exactly how many Ugandans have studied and qualified in what area or other. I think only now the people in the Petroleum Exploration and Production Department trying to do some sort of skills study to find which skills are there in this country and who has those skills and therefore what needs to be done. And I think partly that's so because universities like Makerere and others don't do tracer studies, they don't track their students who graduated, what are they doing, and government doesn't do so either. Obviously, things like census would have helped, but then, you know, when the census are due, you get to postpone them, you get to... there's no systematic way of tracking the human resource here. So, but I think what's going on is the president, you know, he's always said, you know, Africa needs to harness, you know, science, technology, harness nature. It's only technology and science that will take us to the next level and things like that. And I think he's trying to articulate a policy stance that says let's focus more on science. And that is, by the way, a policy stance I'm sympathetic to. But maybe the way he's articulating it, saying, you know, sort of disparaging or coming off as disparaging the arts, or what some people call the humanities, I think that's where the problem is. I think you could say less, and there has to be a debate, really. It's not just, this is not a thing I think that should be decided just by the president or even by the cabinet. I think there has to be some sort of discussion on the new direction for education in this country in parliament, and also the public should join. And then where you could arrive at something that says, maybe given where we are, given the kind of country we want to have, the kind of economy we want to have, the kind of society we want to have in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we think science and technology will take us there, and innovation and research and all the things that come with that. But to do that, we need to fund more of those subjects that we are interested in. So how do you do that? Do you do that to the exclusion of the so-called arts? Or do you say maybe let's do 60-40%? Or do we do 70-30%? Now, I don't know whether these sorts of studies and policy discussions have taken place within government or amongst people who advise the president or not. If they have, at least I haven't heard of them. I haven't read anything to that effect. So I think we can have a debate, but the debate needs to be, I think, much more better introduced and much more serious and much more focused.
Melina, let me come to you right, picking up from where Bernard has stopped. Is it just a statement made behind the studio in the Serena Conference Center, or is there some serious government planning and thinking, an analysis to say, this is where we stand, this is what we need to do, this is how we need to do it?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think the way that it came out sets up a false dichotomy. It doesn't need to be sciences versus arts and humanities, for example. Ideally, you know, students who reach the tertiary level are getting some of both of these things. So I don't think there needs to be a confrontation per se. But I think beyond that, I want to believe that behind the president's statement was a larger frustration with a bigger problem, and the humanities and the arts became a scapegoat in this case. But I think the frustration is a bit misdirected. So the frustration is both with the state of education generally, and this starts from the primary level. You know, the quality of teaching and the amount of learning that's taking place from primary school all the way up to university. And you know, we can see from various studies that have been done, we've talked about them here previously, the quality is just very poor, whether you're starting at primary school or even whether you're getting to the university level. You know, you're not learning necessarily what you should be learning, and you're not creating the human capital, whether it's in the sciences or the arts, that you should be. And the second frustration is the state of employment. So implicit in this, in kind of his statement, is the idea that, you know, there should be more people working in the sciences, there should be more people in technology, but the fact of the matter is there aren't those jobs available yet either. So if you look at the breakdown of the economy, the vast majority of people, as we know, are in agriculture, and you know, then second to that is services, and still the vast majority of jobs are in those sectors. And if you train people to be chemists, physicists, etc., you know, we just don't have the number of jobs yet to fill those positions. We can talk about the oil sector, which he mentioned specifically. To imagine that you can train, you know, thousands of people to be engineers and they're going to work in the oil sector is vastly overestimating the number of jobs that are actually going to be in that sector. So there's two issues to reiterate. One is the state of the education sector, and two is the state of the employment opportunities available and the economy more generally speaking.
Prof.
Yes.
What is the ratio now? What is available at our tertiary institutions? You were head of Makerere, and when this debate started, kind of started to talk about investing more resources in sciences, incentives being given to science faculties as opposed to arts faculties, and the discussion about stopping sponsorship, government sponsorship of arts students. Do we have the numbers? What are the ratios at our universities today, and particularly Makerere University, which you headed?
Maybe before I really get into that, I want to first make one statement. I think we must first appreciate that the president is one person who understands science very well. He understands humanities and arts, and he has actually mastered history and even political science. If you look at what you talk about as problems of Africa, saying about, like in Uganda, people being overthrown by the army, the military, the issue of secretary generals, and so on. So he understands that and has applied it very well and very effectively. So you have to realize that actually the president makes very well calculated political statements. So when he says arts are useless, he's making a political statement. But before, maybe let me get to what you've asked, which is what are the ratios? You know, right now, if you look at across the country in higher education institutions, we have approximately 75% of the students leaving tertiary institutions having done arts or humanities, and 25% is what you regard as the scientists. But these scientists leave university when they have not acquired the skills, because in most cases they lack laboratories, they lack qualified teachers or lecturers. So basically, they are not skilled enough to actually go out and do the work they are supposed to do. And that's a big challenge. So when the president makes a political statement, he's looking at, for example, unemployment, because you don't expect the president to be overthrown by the population. The majority of the population are now youth. So there is huge unemployment, and it's among the youth. And these youth are mainly from the humanities. one of the things that actually they are not getting jobs because maybe they don't have the skills. So he's saying, look, maybe go for vocational skills. Maybe if you had taken sciences, you'd be better off. And that's a very good political statement. But by and large, really, I would think that the president knows that the humanities are very useful. If you look at the best paid people in America, they are the artists, the musicians, you know, the actresses, and so on. And he knows that very well. Yeah.
So Chris, is the president's statement helping to address the problem?
I think Melina touched on it. It's a frustration. Frustrated by his own failings. The problem I'm trying to highlight is the manpower problem. And manpower is planned. He is the policy principal. Why hasn't he planned for this country's manpower? You know, when you begin making statements like you're also lamenting, a country of lamentations, from LOC 1 up to the president, then we're in trouble. I don't want to agree with Professor Barry here that he understands these things. Museveni is bounded like any other person. He's not the alpha and omega of the information, of knowledge. So the trouble here is on policy matters when you're pronouncing yourself. His own government, through the Minister of Finance, took a policy position that all government actions must be based on evidence, evidence-based decision-making, and have so many vehicles running around this town that they are on evidence-based decision-making. This simply means before you take a decision, you must provide evidence that what you're taking or what action you are taking is based on some quantifiable data. So where did he get evidence that arts are useless? Just from his whims. And that is also a consequence of a one-man rule. You know, it's an institution, the president, the individual. The presidency is not there. Otherwise, Tumeba, the Minister of Presidency, would have provided the president with the data. And the president speaks on the basis of data provided by other organs of government. But he is invited to endanger, he pronounces himself and moves on. These are consequences of Museveni's failing to plan for the country of 1986. Now he thinks the problem stares at him. The best way is to go science. Yes, who says the science is bad? For me, I think even the researchers, the millennials here, know. You can no longer say, I'm going to adopt a quantitative approach. They now say you have to triangulate, you have to blend. You add as you blend. Now for him, he says arts, sciences are bad. And he was demeaning women. I remember that. You're studying gender, gender, gender. This is the same man who says his government has liberated women. Now, it's ridiculous the study of women.
Don't we miss the argument when we focus just on President Museveni, what he says? What does the country need? And how do you arrive at what the country needs?
First of all, what the country needs cannot be good because Museveni is a stumbling block. Because he does not speak as a country. He speaks as him. That's where I'm beginning from. If you talk about IT, Charles, how many Ugandan parents are now lamenting that they send their children to do IT? When IT began here, IT expert is here. They told the students go and do IT. Today, our IT graduates are so desperate to find what to do because they simply told them do IT. We are not going to run a country without planning. And Museveni should have planned how many IT experts do we want. Than just telling people, parents, go and pay school fees. IT is good. They come out, you and me every day, people ask us because they assume because we are working, we can be able to connect them to jobs. And they have IT.
But Chris,
yes, Prof.
Let me just say something. You know, it takes us back to where we started from. Do you think when the president started creating districts, people didn't demand for them? You see, when you ask what do people want, I will tell you this, that when the president started creating districts, people demanded for them.
But he stimulated them.
No, they demanded for them.
You create the demand.
And
You can create the demand.
You know?
You can create the demand, and once it grows, then you allow other people to own.
Now, Professor, you as a professor, you're a leader. You keep saying you have visions. Is your vision part of creating districts? If you think you have a vision, then that vision should be for the good. And then you say, people have demanded districts, so you abandon your vision and give districts. It cannot work like that, Professor. See, what I want to ask President Museveni, for instance, to now begin to account. Let him account to us. How is he selecting people studying oil courses in Norway? There are over 300 Ugandans over in Stavanger. There are so many soldiers. Museveni has a very sinister plan at times. You are talking about sciences when you are recruiting, selecting Ugandans on what basis to study these courses?
But you see, in Africa, it's about winning power, political power. You have to follow what people want. If people want this to give them,
We
if
have
people want
about
road,
when
give them.
political
Isn't
party
that-
do
people
what?
want-
Professor,
That's what happens.
isn't
Yes.
that where the problem is? Because
That's where the problem
you
is.
wouldn't expect
Because in the US and other developed countries,
like the common view seems to be around this table, that it is out of frustration. You would see people burning the midnight oil, cranking up the numbers, planning and implementing. If you look at government investment, when you're still at Makerere, what amount of investment came in to stimulate study of sciences? You have seen arts-based courses being able to grow and expand. You were dean of the IT and computer science department, which has grown now into a college. And you were able to raise resources, not primarily from government, from other sources, to build and expand that institution. You see the gender expanded significantly. Department of Economics, I think, where the marketing and the Bachelor of Marketing and Economics, those have expanded. Has there been corresponding growth in the science areas? Is there evidence that government has actually evaluated and said, this is the problem, this is how we need to deal with it? Other governments would create incubation centers, and the incubation centers work. And you see that people are being directed right from an early stage to be able to feed into those incubation centers. Are those interventions there, or are we just sitting at a function and then making a pronouncement?
you see, we have to really realize that when you're analyzing, let's say, developed economies, like in the US, in the UK, and then look at Africa, there you have development plans that are clear. If like there's a plan on health, you only talk about how, the implementation part of it. But here in Africa, a president or his cabinet, they come up with a manifesto and it becomes what is supposed to be done. We don't follow. We have a national development plan. Have you seen how much of it is followed? We don't follow it. So if you ask me about how
So
much...
the problem is not arts and sciences,
If
is
you
it?
ask me how much money is going into universities, it is very little.
To teach sciences.
No, Charles, the problem now is that
It's very little.
Uganda is facing all the development challenges because we have a president who did arts. If we had a president who had done sciences, maybe we would have developed.
So his frustration you're suggesting is because he did arts.
He
didn't
did
do
arts,
sciences.
so he has failed to run
Which
Uganda.
president has done sciences rather?
Yeah.
But let me come to you on this. The seriousness of the president's statement, in my view, should be tested against government's investment and commitment towards promoting sciences. Before we came on air, we were discussing with Professor, and the verdict, the reality is, you cannot have scientists graduating at university level if you haven't trained them in primary school, if you haven't trained them through secondary, or through higher education. So where are these scientists going to come from that the president is obsessed about?
It would appear to me that this is just another of those. And by the way, the president has been consistent on science, going way back. It's just that he never quite followed through, or the people who should have followed through never followed through. He's, but now maybe that he's harping on it more and more, you'll see something happening, some movement here and there, but not properly thought through. It's just the same way we went, Plan for Modernization of Agriculture, NADS, grow vanilla. How many people almost committed suicide because we're growing vanilla and there was no market? So why do you tell people grow vanilla when you haven't thought through the entire value chain of vanilla? So that's the thing. So if you want to have sciences, what is it that you have to do? If you want to emphasize more on that side, that government resources, for me as government, because you have only X maybe amount of money, and you're saying as a government, the policy now is to encourage sciences more than the arts. Maybe the private sector can do more of the arts, the private universities can do more of the other things, but for us, we'll give more of the resources to the sciences. So then how do you do it? And like you said, you got to start right from the beginning. But the way like she was saying, the way science is been taught, mathematics, all those from the founding principles, 1 + 1 = 2, nobody ever tells you why that is and why that is important and why you should study that.
I think the president said he was frustrated that the symbol.
So where are the teachers? Where are the facilities? How are you recruiting the students and encouraging them? Where are the science fairs in primary schools, high schools, and all of these things? And then it has to be step by step. And then, do we also then just have to talk about ending up at universities? Where are the intermediate but critical institutions like polytechnics? Other countries have polytechnics where you do actually actual
Chris, can you
where are the teachers? Can you answer me? where are the grandchildren going to study? In a private school or in a government school?
Melina, I'll come to you.
Where do they
I can only answer for where my daughter is going to
Where do
study.
these
After
grandchildren
short
go?
commercial break, we'll pick it up after short commercial break. We'll be right back.
All right, Charles.